Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Error Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
Tonight on the bonus round, another Metroid-focused episode as we list our top 5 Metroid items and also our predictions and wishes for Metroid Prime 4 on Nintendo Switch. Don't go anywhere, the show starts right now. Welcome to Collateral Gaming bonus round. I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Gio.
And we are podcasting straight from San Antonio, Texas. Well, that's not quite true, is it? Because you're not in San Antonio, Texas.
Nope.
I wonder if we might need to change that.
Well, let's see. I'm in Jessup, Georgia currently. So, I mean, we could split it up, say I'm podcasting from San Antonio, and I could say something along the lines of I'm podcasting from Jessup, but hopefully soon we can connect or something like that,
Something like that. Or I don't know, we'll figure it out. But anyway, yes, my friends, we are a 420 friendly podcast, so whatever you have, smoke it if you've got it. And we're sitting here. It's another bonus round episode. This is another kind of just impromptu thing. We're like, fuck it, we want to talk about Metroid, so let's talk about Metroid, right?
Amen to that.
So we'll start off with a top 5 list of our top 5 favorite Metroid items. We'll start with you, Zach.
Okay, so my number 5 choice today is the Wave Beam. And that is in almost every single Metroid game, with the exception of Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3, which is kind of replaced with the Nova Beam, except the Nova Beam can only pass through phasite. The Wave Beam is awesome because with the 2D Metroid games, the Wave Beam gives you the ability to, shoot through walls and objects to reach places that you haven't gotten to before. Like in Super Metroid or in Metroid Fusion, you can shoot through barriers to hit buttons that will allow you to access previously inaccessible places. And in Metroid Prime, it's really cool because it has an electrical feature which allows you to charge power nodes behind walls, especially in the Phendrana Drifts, which is where you get it. What is the creature that you have to fight? It's a Sheegoth, right?
It's a Sheegoth, yeah, an adult Sheegoth.
Yeah, you fight and face the first adult Sheegoth of the game, which they become base enemies later. But you take that thing out and it gives you the Wave Beam. But in Prime, it allows you to electrically charge nodes that you couldn't before and allows you to access areas. And I just love this beam because in the 2D games, it's kind of like the last beam that you get. And once you get it, you're like, okay, now I can pretty much get anywhere that needs to be accessed with a beam of some sort. And in Prime, it gives you the ability to electrocute enemies and defeat other enemies in a way that you couldn't before. And in Prime, there's missile combinations with each beam that you get, like super missiles, ice spreader, flamethrower, and the wave buster, which you find in the Chozo ruins after you use this. I think you use the spider ball track where in the same room where you get the morph ball to climb up to the top, go through, and you can go in there. And by the way, if you're listening, there's also a artifact in there. Spoilers, sorry. But you climb to the top of that tower while using I prefer to use super missiles, but you can use individual missiles too to break down the tower until you can finally reach the top and get the wave buster. You use 5 missiles and you have a constant stream of electricity that burns through missiles quickly, but it's awesome because you can just electrocute anything in your path. It's pretty great. So yeah, I love the wave beam. It's really cool. For me, it's extremely iconic. Well, I mean, for the Metroid series, it's extremely iconic, but I always look forward to getting this item. And it's fantastic for me because it Metroid Fusion was my first game, and when I got the wave beam, it made your beam look so cool because it just had this really cool oscillating effect that just made your beam rotate as it was passing through enemies and passing through walls. And I absolutely loved that, and I thought it was cool. And so when you told me to grab some items to list, I was like, oh, that's the first thing that popped into my head. I was like, most definitely the wave beam.
I want to say it popped into my head as well. Actually, the wave beam is badass, and out of the different elemental beams that you get, I think it's definitely one of my favorites in Prime and in the 2D games as well. I remember using it in Other M as well. It had kind of the same features that it does in the 2D games, where it just goes through walls. And I liked the electrical puzzles you can do with it in Prime, and yeah, like you, I love the oscillating effect as well. That was badass in Metroid Prime. And it's actually kind of similar to another item on my list, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But my number 5 is the Spider Ball.
Woohoo!
Featured in Metroid 2, Return of Samus, Metroid Prime, the whole trilogy, actually, all 3 games. Federation Force, and we will talk no more of that. That is the only name drop that game gets. And then also, of course, Metroid 2's remake, which is Samus Returns. So I love the Spider Ball. It makes you, it gives you a lot more opportunities to access the world, particularly in the 2D games. In Metroid 2 and Samus Returns, you can climb on any wall using the Spider Ball, so it actually is pretty badass. But even in the Prime games, being able to move along the rails and boosting off of them and using jumps and all the different Spider Ball puzzles were just highlights of the game for me. I enjoyed the gameplay. I mean, the Morph Ball as a whole, I think, is one of my favorite items in the Metroid series, just the whole thing. But the Spider Ball just makes it even greater. And I loved the I just love the, what am I trying to say here? Just the movement style, and I like the puzzles and what you can do with it.
Yeah, I also really like how I think in most of the games it changes how the morph ball looks too. In Metroid Prime, one of my favorite moments is when you defeat Thardus, because that's such an amazing fight. It's extremely badass. And because at the end of the fight, Samus is just looking up with her arm cannon, just watching this rock figure that's been brought to life just crumble before her eyes. And then you see the little spider ball icon floating there, and you go and pick it up, and she goes into her morph ball, and it like attaches the two sides to her, and you notice now it's not just your morph ball, it's the morph ball, but it's improved and it's shiny and these green clear translucent circles.
Yeah,
it's so awesome.
I remember that. Yeah, and I remember fighting Thardus, which is kind of a tough battle. I remember the first time I went through that, and then afterwards, you get the reward of the Spider Ball. Which, if you're playing Metroid Prime up to that point, you're seeing all these magnetic rails that you could be able to use the Spider Ball, and so you're just waiting for you to get that upgrade, and then you do. And like you said, I love the way that the Morph Ball looks in Prime once you get the Spider Ball. And I love how they improved upon it in the next 2 games by adding the ability to boost off of the Spider Ball rails. That was used to great effect in both Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. A lot of neat little puzzle areas.
Oh yeah, and some rather rage-inducing areas too, where you have to try to line up. The camera angle does not let you see it properly, and you have to try to line up how to drop perfectly. I think one of the most memorable Spider Ball moments for me is getting to the fight with the Omega Pirate in the Phazon Mines. And right before, at the top of the impact crater, right before you face Metroid Prime, literally the hallway right before you get to Metroid Prime, there's that advanced Phazon on the ground, and you have to go through what looks like this really old rusted spider ball path, and it's so cleverly done because if you make one mistake, you're going to fall into that Phazon, and it drops your health so quickly. So you have to be very precise with your movements. And I love using the boost ball to launch yourself up to spider ball tracks. Like you said, the puzzles were fantastically done. And especially you didn't really have to do it too much in Metroid Prime 1, but boosting yourself off of the spider ball tracks is something that is not easily forgotten. Those puzzles are very memorable. I think one of my favorite boosting areas off of spider ball tracks was the entrance to the Forsaken Fortress after Dark Samus destroys the bridge, and you have to finagle your way across the open gap by boosting across the path It's fantastic. The spider ball is an amazing item to get.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of neat little clever puzzles. I like the Powerbomb Guardian fight in Metroid Prime 2 Echoes as well. Frustrating fight, don't get me wrong.
Ew.
But it kind of used the power the spider ball well. And then I remember using it also in that fight against Emperor Ing, which that part's also really frustrating. But it's a great use of the item though. Still,
Very unique idea, just very rage-inducing. That's a word that I will say a lot when talking about those kind of areas.
yeah.
Ooh. They made it a little bit simpler in the trilogy, but the original Metroid Prime 2 Emperor Ink fight, so many GameCube controllers could have gone through the screen, and I would not have been upset.
Oh, I don't think I ever beat it in the original GameCube version. I did finally beat him in the Prime trilogy, so yeah, if they made it a little bit easier. Actually, I think that was probably a good decision on their part.
Yeah, the copy of Metroid Prime that I had for the GameCube came with a demo version of Metroid Prime 2, and so I loved that demo, and I played it so much. I was like, I have to get this game for the GameCube. And so I originally did. And so I played Prime 1 and Prime 2 leading up to Corruption's release. And that was so exciting. So the GameCube version's really good. You can sequence break very easily in that game. But that's for another topic for another time. But yeah, the spider ball is incredible and very, very awesome item that is usually found, I guess, halfway through the game, roughly. And that's a good estimate.
Yeah.
At least in Prime, you get it halfway through the game.
It generally seems to be halfway through because you see a lot of those spider rails. Echoes kind of, is until you get to Sanctuary. So, I mean, that's mostly pretty fairly late. And I don't think you don't get it in Corruption until kind of the last third of the game as well. Because it's after you get to the pirate home world, but then you go back to Elysia.
Yeah, okay, so my bad. Prime is the only game where you really get it halfway through because you need it early on.
Yeah.
Earlier on, I should say.
But the other games, it's early within the third act, I would say.
Yeah.
But I guess moving on to number 4.
All right, so for me, my number 4 was the diffusion missiles from Metroid Fusion, and I kind of paired this with another item from Metroid Prime, which kind of has the same effect, except because you still have to charge it, and I paired it with the ice spreader. I love these two items simply because the diffusion missiles are awesome. You get them towards the latter half of Metroid Fusion, and since you're is it towards the latter half of Fusion? Because your suit in that game, your suit in that game, because of the X infection, you can't use the ice beam. And so that's another reason why you have to stay clear of the SAX because she can freeze you and kill you instantly. And the diffusion missiles don't really incorporate the ice with your suit, and so that's how you freeze enemies in that game, and you have to charge it up. And I love the effect that it has, because not only can you freeze enemies, you get ice missiles, and then later
you get missiles pretty early on.
Yeah, you get the ice missiles early on, and then you get the diffusion effect later. So the diffusion effect allows you to freeze enemies, but when it's fully charged, it sends like this spiral of, I guess, snowflakes or ice, and it freezes everything in the vicinity. So if you're facing if you're in an area where you have to freeze multiple enemies to like use as pathways or walkways, you can use less ammunition to do that. And the ice spreader in Prime, it's underneath one of the tunnels in the Magmore Caverns. You have to break it with a power bomb. That uses 10 missiles, and you charge it up with the ice beam. And once you fire it, it creates basically this chunk of ice on the wall or an enemy, and it's so devastatingly powerful, and the effect is amazing. The sound effect is awesome. It sounds like that, as best as I can emulate that. But the Omega Pirate is one of my favorite fights in Metroid Prime, and using the ice spreader, if you want to just beat him down really quickly, you hit him with 4 shots of the ice spreader and he's dead. I know we touched on that in a former episode actually the first episode I was on with you talking about the Prime trilogy. I talked about beating the Omega Pirate with 4 ice spreader shots, and that's really awesome. I love those weapons. I always love weapons that you can use to freeze enemies with, because it's like, haha, you don't kill them, you just kind of look at them while they're frozen. They can't do anything. And I really appreciate that. And when I got the diffusion missiles, I was like, this is new. This is something I haven't seen before. This is a really cool concept. And so I definitely have to throw that on my list. And Ice Spreader is always something I get the second I'm able to get that power up. I run and go grab it because it's something I've got to have because I'm a bit of a completionist when it comes to Metroid games. And so
yeah, me too.
By the end of the game, I usually have 250 to 255 missiles, and you just can have a heyday with it. You can go crazy, go stupid.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I like the Ice Spreader as well. In fact, although I feel like I didn't utilize the charge combos as much as I could have, because I don't usually get them until late in the game. But I remember the Ice Spreader being particularly useful, especially against enemies that are more vulnerable to ice and affecting a lot of them.
Yeah.
Not sure how effective it would be against the Metroids though, because they're kind of floating in the air. But
yeah. Well, I know that. Okay, so the Wave Beam and the Wave Buster have like homing effects. They basically lock onto targets.
Right.
But with the Ice Spreader and how slowly the Ice Beam fires, you can't really aim into a Metro or lock onto a Metroid and fire it unless you're basically point blank range or just a really good shot. So you basically have to free aim it and lead your shots with it. So it's very difficult to use against Metroids, but it's very effective. If you hit, I believe if you hit a Metroid with the Ice Spreader, it just instantly shatters.
Right.
You don't freeze it or anything like that. And it works with every Metroid up until the Fission Metroids, which those are a whole nother beast.
They're a whole other beast. But
yes, they are.
I mean, it makes sense because you've got the concussive force of the missile plus ice, which is the Metroid's weakness. So you would expect a weapon like that. But at the same time, you could just charge it up with a charged ice beam and then missile it. So kind of seems like a waste to use 10 missiles up on just a single Metroid, but it works. So you can do it. Definitely effective against the Omega Pirate.
Oh yeah.
My number 4, and I was alluding to this earlier, I think is actually kind of actually very analogous to the Wave Beam. And that is the Annihilator Beam from Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Although definitely a lot more powerful, but if you notice in Echoes, a lot of the beams and visors in that game were actually analogous to the beams and visors in the original Metroid Prime, with the light beam kind of being the plasma beam, and the dark beam having the effects of the ice beam, and then the wave beam having the effects of the Annihilator. Although they had different configurations and they have different rate of fires, but in terms of like the effects that they had, and where Metroid Prime 1 did the kind of the electric puzzles, Metroid Prime 2 replaced those with the sonic puzzles that you use with the Annihilator beam. And I will say also, like I said before, the Annihilator beam is also much more powerful. In the original Metroid Prime, the power beam has the greatest rate of fire. Prime 2, the Annihilator beam is, and it better because it uses both dark and light beam ammo. And you get it towards the very end of the game, but oh my god, is it effective. I remember it being particularly useful against Emperor Ing, at least in the first phase of the fight.
Yeah, those tentacles are a bit.
They are a bitch. Actually, what helped me with those was the Seeker missiles. An honorable mention on our list. But yeah, the Seeker missiles was actually what got me through Emperor Ing, the tentacles. But the Annihilator beam was good for shooting the eye. And I suppose in the second or the third part of the fight, where you have to switch between light and dark, you could just keep the Annihilator beam on, although you'd be wasting ammo. But either way, the Annihilator beam actually kind of had that effect in Metroid Prime 2 as well, is that, without having to switch between light and dark, if you were okay with just, wasting one ammo, you could kill enemies that were weak to either one. And my favorite thing was instant killing enemies by using an Annihilator shot. And I remember mentioning this in our Metroid Prime Trilogy review. Using it on the light beacons and using it on the light crystals, because the enemies would be simultaneously attracted to it, but also die on impact. And you just get this sense of satisfaction, like, stupid.
You kind of blew my mind. Kind of going back to what you said about the Seeker missiles and the Emperor Ing. I never ever even thought to use the Seeker missiles on those tentacles. And
really?
While you were talking about that, I was just mind blown. I was like, wow.
It made sense to me because there were 5 of them, and a single missile seemed to knock one out, or I think actually it takes a couple, but.
Well, I never thought about that, and I know that the first couple of ones, yeah, he puts out 5 tentacles, but the last one he shoots out like 11 or 12,
You're
and
right.
You have to take them out really quick with the Annihilator beam. but I never once thought to use seeker missiles. But the Annihilator Beam is insane. Like it's pretty cool. You don't even have to lock on to enemies to take them out because it will seek them out. It will literally annihilate them. It just hunts them down. And it is a lot like the Wave Beam from Prime, but the Wave Beam, you have to lock on to enemies to be able to have the beam home in on them. But the Annihilator Beam just seeks them out. It's incredible, and it's very, very efficient.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I was wrapping up on that one.
Oh, it's good and bad because it to my chagrin, sometimes when I was trying to do the light crystal and light beam trick, the Annihilator Beam would instead try to home in on the enemy, and I'd be like, no, you can kill the enemy instantly if you just hit the fucking beacon. Like, what are you doing? But so I wish you could lock onto those, but.
Life hack: just stand right in front of the beam or right in front of the beacon and just fire.
That's what.
That way, it has nowhere to go.
But yeah, no, the lock-on effect was nice. The homing effect, the fact that it was effective against all types of enemies. By that late in the game, you do have a lot of light and dark ammo, and because dark ammo gives you light ammo and light ammo gives you dark ammo, killing things with the Annihilator Beam gives you a little bit of both back. So, I mean, ultimately, by that point in the game, managing your beam ammo wasn't nearly as bad, and the Annihilator Beam was definitely worth it. It's just it's kind of a shame that you don't get it till late in the game, but that's kind of the point, right?
Oh, yeah.
You get the most rewarding items towards the end.
This is true. And something else to mention, I don't know if you were about to touch on this, but we were talking about charge combos earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Phazon mining site, in I think it's the Dark Aegon Wastes, once you have the Eliminator Beam, the Annihilator Beam, you can go back and open the door, the Annihilator Beam door that's on the far right side when you walk, or no, it's on the far left side when you walk in from the first entrance. You open that and there's the Sonic Boom, which is one of the greatest charge combos in the entire Prime series.
It is.
Which it uses 50 light beam ammo and 50 dark beam ammo, but it just creates this wave of sound that it basically distorts reality wherever it hits. And you see just this, I guess, this prism effect.
Yeah.
And it's so devastatingly powerful. Mm-hmm, it is instant. And any ing that you come across, except for, of course, the Emperor ing, they just die instantly when you hit them with it. It is incredible. They're just gone. No chance. Absolutely no chance. And the sound that it makes, I'm a big music guy and sound guy. And so when I'm playing games, the sound effects have such a huge impact on me. And the sound that it makes I'm thinking about it right now and I'm just kind of shuddering because it's so awesome.
Well, I bet you loved Wind Waker.
Oh my God. Yes, I did. Except I didn't love changing the direction for this. In the early GameCube version, I didn't like changing the wind every 10 seconds, but they fixed that in the HD version. So
the HD version fixed that with the Swift Sail.
Yes, they did. I can live with myself now, knowing that. But yeah, the sound has a huge thing with me, or I have a huge thing with the sound, and so that sound effect always gets me every single time, and I'll waste ammo just listening to it.
The sound is strong with this one.
Indeed.
All right. Well, moving on.
All right. So number 3 for me, I chose the X-ray visor. And the X-ray visor is really, really cool for me. The first time I saw it was in Metroid Prime. This item can be found in Metroid Prime, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and Super Metroid. I actually didn't play Super Metroid until about a month ago for the first time ever, and I had no clue that this item was in the game. But the X-ray visor is awesome because it gives you a perspective in the game that, of course, that you haven't had before. It allows you to see behind walls. It allows you to find power-ups that were hidden. It allows you to see hidden platforms, which in the Talon overworld where it's raining, you can kind of see those platforms by looking and seeing where the raindrops are hitting, so you can kind of guess. But the X-ray visor is fantastic because it allows you to set a clear path for yourself. And I just love the effect that it has on the screen, the almost black and white with a hint of blue. And when you're facing Chozo ghosts, it's fantastic because you never lose where they're at, because before the X-ray visor, those things are so hard to keep up with. But with the X-ray visor, you can just stay locked onto one until it's dead. In Super Metroid, you just have like this ray of vision in front of you that you can change with the analog stick, and it allows you to easily find power-ups, because Super Metroid it's so difficult to find all the power-ups. There's so many places you can go, so much exploration that you can do. And the X-ray visor makes it a lot easier to see pathways that you couldn't before. In Prime, it allows you to see doors that are hidden behind walls, like at the top of the Phendrana. At the top of Phendrana's edge, there's a plasma beam door hidden behind a wall that you can't find until you have the X-ray visor. You go back there, there's a Chozo artifact or a power bomb expansion. I can't remember off the top of my head. Either way, it's necessary. And I love the X-ray visor in Prime 3 because of there's also a little sound effect that comes with each visor. And they did not back away from the chance to make this extra special, because when you're at the bottom of the research lab in the pirate stronghold in Phendrana Drifts, you get the X-ray, or not the X-ray, you get the thermal visor, which has this little jingle behind it that sounds like the song "Be Prepared" from Hoodwinked, but that's my personal that's my personal thing. But with the X-ray visor, it just sounds like you're starting up a computer. It's like a little login sound, and I love that. I absolutely love it because it allows me to focus more on the game, and having the ability to see things that I once couldn't creates a whole new layer of experience and a whole new layer of enjoyment for me. And the X-ray visor just opens up so much potential in all three of these games to not only find power-ups, but to find new pathways and new doors. And it changes up the sound a little bit, and it gives you a new perspective that says, okay, there's so much more to this game that I haven't seen yet. And I think you find the X-ray visor in Metroid Prime. You find the X-ray visor it's like a ancient. Oh gosh, you get it after you get the power bombs in Prime, and it's in the Talon overworld where you find it, close to the first entrance to the Phazon mines. There's like a ancient artifact site where you can find a Chozo artifact, but in the pit right before you blow it open with a power bomb, and you see this whole site where you have to fight like 3 or 4 Chozo ghosts. The X-ray visor is just sitting on a little pedestal, and I absolutely love that because it allows you to open up and see, oh wow, there's a whole open area behind these walls. How do I get to it? And then you have to scan the walls. They're made of bendesium, so you just blow them up with a power bomb. I love the new perspective and the open areas that you can access with the X-ray visor. It's always been a favorite of mine, and so that's why it's on my list.
Hell yeah. And I think the analog to that in Metroid Prime 2 was the dark visor. But I think I like the X-ray visor's use a lot more, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I loved using that in both Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I hadn't been aware that it was in Super Metroid, although I guess I just looked it up. In that game, it's called the X-ray scope.
Excuse me. Sorry about that.
No, it's functionally the same. I mean, they probably, if they did a remake, they'd probably switch it to be X-ray visor, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that's what threw me off. But of course, I don't think I ever got that far in Super Metroid either. But yeah, that was a badass item, and I loved both that and the thermal visor. I think it made things a lot more interesting in Prime, and I liked a lot of the puzzles that you could use with it, and the fact that you could see. You could trace enemies that you weren't able to trace before, like the Chozo ghosts and whatnot.
Yeah,
which is why functionally it's very similar to the Dark Visor in Prime 2. But I do feel like Prime 1 and Prime 3 do utilize that visor a little bit more. But yeah, no, that's definitely one of my favorites as well, and I think it might be somewhere in my top 10 list for sure. But my number 3 is the power bomb. And I know this is kind of generic. I mean, I'm sure this is going to be at the top of a lot of people's lists, but the power bomb is just so overpowered, and getting it in every Metroid game, and again, this is in almost all of them, it is definitely a turning point in the game, and usually tends to happen more towards the later parts of the games, because it's just so overpowered. And I remember you don't even get to do it in Other M until actually the last final boss fight. But it just completely destroys every enemy in the room, or in the vicinity, I should say. Especially in the case of the Prime games. And I remember the SAX using the power bomb in Metroid Fusion, and that just made the SAX fights that much more terrifying. Or
Yep.
I think there's one part where you use the power bomb and that wakes up the SAX, right? And causes her to come investigate you.
Oh yeah. Adam tells you about that. Like you open a specific area. I think heading down to sector 3 after you get the power bombs, and he like tells you, "Hey, your power bomb was detected by the SAX. She's hunting you. She's looking for you." And in your mind, you're thinking, "Oh shit," because I can't stand up to this thing because I don't know if it's a woman. I don't know if that counts. It's an X mimicking you. It's an it. Yeah, there you go.
I think so. Also, the other function I like of the X-ray visor, which is put to good use in the 2D games, is the fact that it unmasks all the blocks on the screen. So it's actually the predominant way of finding power-ups later in the game. Whenever you go in, I mean, you kind of just power bomb a room to see what's in there, you know, and it shows everything in the room, and that does make things a lot easier. I remember using that to that effect.
Yeah, power bombs are really cool just because it sucks because the power bombs in Other M are so awesome and you literally cannot use them until the very last encounter with the Metroid Queen and then the post game where you go back to find Adam's helmet.
Right.
And we're not gonna talk too much about Other M because that's a whole other spiel we can go on. But I really liked the effect that they had in the cinematic of Samus's morph ball just shooting up in the air, dropping a power bomb, and it was devastating. It actually looked like a blast, and it was really cool. But the Prime games, I'm sad that it's not in Metroid Prime 3. I'm sad that they took that out, and I guess it was replaced sort of with the ship missiles, but
or with the hyper ball in a way too as well.
Yeah, because it did affect a wide area. But I loved the effect that the power bombs had. If you had a bunch of Metroids around you, you could just drop a power bomb and wipe them out, so you could keep going. Finally, being able to break Bendesium walls and Densium walls in Prime 2 to get those power ups and access those other areas, it was really satisfying. And in the 2D Metroid games, I didn't like power bombs as much in the 2D Metroid games because it just kind of blackened the screen. But like you said, I did like how it exposes power-ups and kind of lets you know where you're supposed to go, gives you a path. So power bombs are really cool. They're not necessarily on my list, but it is an item that I look forward to getting. I love how you get them in Metroid Prime 1. You go to, I guess that's your goal the first time you get to the Phazon Mines, is to go down and hunt for those power bombs. You don't know that's what you're after, but that fight with that invisible droid is so annoying.
Oh yeah.
But I love the puzzle getting to the power bombs, like rolling through the little dirt with rolling through the dirt with the little electric fences that you have to time, and you have to bomb the little puddle of water to short circuit it's really cool.
Oh, in that part, that fight with that drone right before you get the power bomb too is all in this long stretch since your last save station. I remember that because I was, and I didn't die, thank God, the first time I fought that drone. But I remember fighting through a huge section of the Phazon Mines, and then finally getting to this fucking drone, which almost kills me, stressing out because I really don't want to have to play through all of that again. And then once you beat it, you got to do this whole puzzle, and you're still kind of freaking out because you can't quite get to a save station yet, and you really don't want anything to happen. You don't want your console to turn off or anything. And so, but then you finally get it, and I think like shortly after that, you finally get to a save station. But I just remember being completely stressed out by that. But go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, one of those ice beam doors in that room takes you directly to a save station, and you can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The first time I got through the Phazon Mines, I got just absolutely mollywopped by the elite pirate, and I had like half of an energy tank left. And you get down to that elevator, the elevator that takes you down to the lower part of the mines, and I did not know that the crates in the elevator exploded when you shot them. And so I was like, yes, crates, there might be health, and I shot one and it killed me.
No.
And I just turned off my GameCube. I was so mad. I turned off my GameCube, threw the controller on the couch, and I just got up and left. And at that point, I was like 9 years old, so I'm pretty sure I started crying because I had fought so hard to get to that point, and I just died. Just died by shooting a crate of all things. Oh, the Phazon Mines is so fantastic. One of my favorite areas in a Metroid game to date.
Yeah, the Faceless Mines is definitely a highlight of the game, and the like I said, getting the power bomb in every game is I think a major turning point. I always look forward to it, and obviously it's one of the most overpowered parts in the game. And there was something else I was gonna say about the power bombs, and I can't remember. Oh well. All right. Well, moving on to number 2.
Ooh, all right. So the number 2 item that I have on my list, which I guess most people would argue that this isn't really an item, it's more of a, more of a suit. But I love this because of what you can do with it. My number 2 is the gravity suit. The gravity suit is fantastic because it allows you to move freely through liquid environments.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2D Metroid games, it also gives you immunity to lava. So you can explore the lower levels of Sector 3 and anywhere else in the game, or Sector 3, talking directly about Fusion. But in Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission and Super Metroid, and unless you're in Lower Norfair, you can access lava areas and you can kind of see what's down there. And it's really cool because in 3D games, you still take damage from lava. But being able to explore liquid environments and move freely is so awesome. The downed frigate in the Talon overworld is so beautiful. The music is just great. And all the while you're just exploring while all these fish are going around you. And the purple, the way it makes Samus's suit look, the purple and the blue,
yes,
with the yellow, it's just so beautiful. Her visor is this crystal blue, and it makes the morph ball look so awesome. It makes the morph ball look so cool. Not as cool as the Phazon suit. That's a whole other topic, but it's a beautiful item and it's really awesome. I love not being limited in liquid environments, moving around, collecting power-ups, and just it's amazing. And I love the effect when you get it. It's in the back of the Phendrana Drifts, right? It's in Phendrana's Edge when you get it.
Yeah.
And when Samus collects it, it's kind of the same as the Various suit in Metroid Prime. When she gets it, she like lifts up off the ground and puts her arms out. And it shows her face in the camera and she just closes her eyes.
Kind of Sailor Moon's there for a second.
Yeah, she's just accepting this blessing from the Chozo. And it's so cool. It's so iconic. I love watching that. And it just kind of puts you in the feels a little bit. At least it did with me. And so I love the gravity suit. I love the effects it has, and I could talk about it for a while, but I will let you carry on if you have anything to say.
The gravity suit as well. I love the way that it looks. I think gravity suit was one of the items that I think at least touched my mind when I was coming up with the list. But yeah, I love the way that it looks in most of the games with the different color scheme. Prime 2 has the gravity feature. The gravity boost. That's what's called, the gravity boost.
Yeah.
Which functionally is the same. Plus, it gives you that boost effect you can do. Although it's just a little attachment on the back of her suit, so not as fun, but still. And then I think Other M was the one that called it the gravity feature, right? And that's where it gives you the ability to actually use gravity in certain areas, right? Like you can walk upside down and shit. I remember those segments of the game, and it actually turns, side scrolling for a second there.
Yeah, it does. I don't necessarily like the gravity feature in Other M. I mean, I like it because of the effect it has, but it's a staple in Metroid games for the gravity feature to at least alter your suit permanently throughout the game. And all the gravity feature does in Other M, it kind of gives you this purple outline when you're in areas that affect your suit, like when you're running away from Sector 0, which that part's cool, but you're just kind of running down a pathway while it's closing behind you. And when you're in water environments, it's that outline. I just don't like the way they did it. I do like it has the same effect, and the side-scrolling parts are really cool. But Metroid Prime 2 was interesting. I knew they were going to do something along the lines of it. Well, they didn't do that in Metroid Prime 3. But in Metroid Prime 2, I was kind of expecting it because I was fresh off of Prime 1, and it was Metroid, so I thought they were going to stick to the iconic items. But I liked the way they did. I like what they did with the variation. The Alpha Blog. You fight the Alpha Blog shortly after you get it, and that's a really cool fight. But yeah, it's just a really great item, and I love the effect that it has. I've probably said that a million times, and I'll say it a million times more. I love the effect. It's great. It allows you to move freely in water, and who doesn't love Who doesn't love moving freely in water? I love doing it.
I don't think Prime 3 had any underwater segments, right? They just completely removed that.
They did.
And I'm with you. I like the when it permanently changes the suit. So in Prime 2, it's just kind of this little extra part on the back part that's not nearly as fun, but
it's okay because it's always there.
It's always there. Yeah, and it does give you that extra boost feature that Prime 2 has that Prime 1 doesn't, where you can just keep holding down B to lift yourself up.
It's cool when you get the light suit in Prime 2. It's cool what it does. The gravity feature kind of like folds into the suit a little bit, but you can still notice it. But it's not like this big thing sticking out of her back. It's more, it looks kind of like a slim jetpack. If you've seen the movie The Rocketeer, it looks a little bit like that, just a little bit more compact on the upper side of her back. And it's really cool. The light suit is, we didn't put it in the honorable mentions list, but the light suit is an honorable mention for me. I love that item. Just, it gives you full immunity to dark aether, and it's badass. It's really cool.
It's a really cool looking suit, and being able to ride the light beams.
Yes, come on, the light beams. Oh, so good, absolutely fantastic.
But my number 2 is the space jump, and this is all going to be complemented by my number 1, which we'll get to in a second here, but our number 1, because I think we have the same one. But we do indeed. The space jump, and I'm gonna modify this somewhat. I'm gonna say that I more mean the space jump in the 2D games, because the space jump boots in the Prime games are just kind of give you the ability to double jump, and that's it. But in the 2D games and in Other M, the space jump allows you to continuously jump, and so it's what, and a lot of times it's incorporated with our number 1, but the space jump is what allows you to indefinitely jump, and there's kind of a trick to it. It's kind of like wall jumping in midair, so you do have to kind of get the hang of it in the 2D games. But once you do, it's great being able to fly anywhere around the screen with no limits on how much you can do it. You just keep going. And that was something that I think was truly unique about Metroid, and I believe it was introduced in Metroid 2, actually. And just being able to continuously jump and explore every inch of the screen, every inch of every room, was fantastic for me.
Was it introduced in Metroid 2? I thought it was in the original NES version of the game.
Nope.
It wasn't?
Nope. Metroid 1 does have the next item that we're going to mention, but it does not have the space jump that was introduced in Metroid 2. And now it is in Zero Mission, because Zero Mission upgraded in every way. But yeah, being able to continuously jump was introduced in Metroid 2.
Yeah, I think Metroid Zero Mission was the only game that doesn't immediately incorporate this with our number 1. I think you have the space jump for a while before you get
no, Metroid Fusion also. You have there's a wait, I believe.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know where I'm wrong, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But yeah, you're right. You fight Yakuza in Metroid, the Spider Boss.
Yeah.
In the Spider X in Fusion, and then you have the space jump for a long time. Okay. All right, yeah. But the space jump is awesome. I absolutely love it. It was really cool. It's just rehashing everything you just said. Being able to continuously jump nonstop, you can basically access any area with this, no matter how high up or how far away it is. If you time your jumps right, you can get there. And it's really cool because in the 2D games, you can't really do this in Metroid Fusion, but you can do it in Super Metroid and Zero Mission. I was a huge fan of bomb jumping and timing, placing my bombs on the ground so I could lift myself up. And there was one time in the first open area in Criteria where Samus's ship is in Zero Mission, I finally was able to bomb jump all the way to the top of the screen. And later in the game, when I got the space jump, I was like, oh, now I can just go here whenever I want. This is amazing. And it just incorporates kind of what you can do, not with the Shine Spark. Shine Spark is also a really amazing item, but you can go anywhere, do anything with the space jump, and it's really cool. It kind of takes away your limitations. Metroid Other M, you can continuously jump, but you can't continuously increase your height unless you're wall jumping.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool. It's really an amazing item and something I always look forward to getting. In the Prime games, it makes sense that it's just a double jump feature because it would kind of be OP to go. It makes sense more in a 2D space because you work so hard to get it and then you don't really get it towards the end of the games. Whereas it makes more sense to get a double jump feature like a little bit before halfway or halfway through the game. Not halfway. You get the space jump very early on, and you have it from the get-go in Metroid Prime 3.
Yeah.
You never have to collect that. You have it from the beginning of the game. So it's a great item and something I always look forward to getting. The Jump Guardian is a really good fight in Echoes, and you just get it in Metroid Prime 1. You make your way to the Talon overworld. And yeah, I think when do you go back and get, it's after the wave beam, right? In Prime 1 where you go back to the Talon overworld and get the space jump boost ball.
Yeah, it's after the boost ball.
Yeah, boost ball.
And what's interesting is you go through the Treasure Ruins, you go to Magmore Caverns, and then you go through to Fendrana Drifts just to get the boost ball, and then you run all the way back to Talon Overworld, although there's a shortcut to get you back there. And then you just to get the space jump, and then you run back to Fendrana Drifts again to get the wave beam.
Okay, yeah, so it's boost ball, space jump, wave beam, not wave beam, space ball, boost jump. Okay,
right.
Space ball, boost jump.
But there's a glitch. I remember the original GameCube version. There's one of the earliest items you can get by sequence breaking is the space jump boots. By kind of jumping off your ship, I believe you can do that.
You can lock on to a starburst plant that is above the first door while on top of your ship, and you can strafe to the right, and you're on the ledge.
That's awesome.
It's great. I did it once successfully, but they patched it in the trilogy. You can't log on to that plant anymore, which sucks. You were supposed to open the scan visor, lock onto the plant, and then strafe to the right, but they made it to where you can't scan that starburst plant until you're much closer to it now, just to kind of patch that so you can't sequence break like that, which sucks, but it's understandable because they want you to play the game a certain way. They want you to experience it and not break it because they didn't. While sequence breaking is a lot of fun, it kind of takes away from the linear experience of the game.
It does in a lot of ways, although it opens up an experience for a lot of speedrunners, but I understand why they would patch it in later versions.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll go ahead and go to our number one, which we ended up having the same first item. And this should come as no surprise. I think this is going to be a number one for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's oh, man.
We have alluded to it.
Yes, we have.
The screw attack.
Woo-hoo.
So famous, and it spawned a whole website / YouTube channel, right? And then eventually it was bought by Rooster Teeth, and I don't think it exists anymore. But yeah, screw attack, and it's in Super Smash Brothers as an item. It's part of Samus's moveset. It's an iconic item and ability she has. It's in the very first Metroid game, and it's usually thought of as coming with the space jump. But essentially what the screw attack actually does, at least in the 2D games and in Other M, is it, in the non-Prime games, is it adds an energy to Samus's space jump and to her spin jump, allowing her to damage enemies and instantly kills them when she runs into their path.
Eliminates. Like I always, when I get this item, I'm like, well, you guys are screwed.
It's usually a late game item. And a lot of people, I think a lot of people associate it with the space jump, which is, I think, was part of your confusion about the original Metroid. But
yep.
It is actually a separate item. I think in Other M they are unlocked together, though. But like you said, Zero Mission and Fusion, they're not. I don't know about Super Metroid. I don't know if I ever got that far, but
no, you get in Super Metroid, you get the space jump, and also in Samus Returns, you get the space jump a lot longer before you get the screw attack, which in Super Metroid, you can get a lot of items before you're supposed to. And it's not necessarily sequence breaking because you're able to access all of these areas in different ways if you're good enough at the game. And like when I played Super Metroid the first time, I think I was 2 hours into the game and I got the space jump and I didn't get the screw attack. The screw attack was the last item I got. So I had the space jump practically the entire time playing through the game. And then I got the screw attack. I was like, hey, now I can just obliterate everything except Metroids. Except Metroids. You can't. Metroids, you have to, in 2D games, you have to freeze them and blow them up with missiles. Well, you can freeze them and then screw attack them, but you can't just kill them with a screw attack. They're too powerful for that. But and the fight with the Metroid Queen and Other M, which those Metroids are insane. Those Metroids are so hard to kill, but the screw attack just kind of pushes them off of you. You have to hit them with the ice beam and then super missile them to kill them. Those Metroids are so tough, but the screw attack is so iconic because there are these little beetle things in the 2D Metroid games that you can't kill them. They are pretty much immune to all of your weaponry. You have to freeze them a lot to use them as paths to get yourself up before you have the space jump. And with the screw attack, with the screw attack, you can finally just eliminate them. You can decimate everything in your path. Space pirates, no chance. These beetles, no chance. Nothing has any chance. The screw attack is by far the most powerful item in the game. And they kind of limit this in the Prime games because you're allowed, when you do the screw attack, you can kill enemies that are in your path, but it's really mainly just a way to get places faster. You're limited to 5 jumps going in any direction, and it's basically it just allows you to move farther. There's a missile. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's a missile expansion in the dark. In Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, when you're hunting for the Sky Temple keys in the Dark Temple grounds, there's a missile expansion that is the Dark Temple grounds, where it's the dark area where the GFS ship went down, and you see all those dead Marines. In the dark version, there's a lot of Dark Talon Metroids, and you can access this missile expansion if you have the Dark Visor.
Yeah, I remember
by looking at the pathways. But I always wait to get it when I have the screw attack, just so I can jump through and just wipe out those Dark Talon Metroids, because though that screw attack does kill Metroids because it's so powerful. You're limited to only 5 jumps, and so they kind of give you a boost on the damage that it does. It basically wipes everything out. And it's not as cool to me in the Prime games, the 3D games, just because of how limited it is. But it's my number one because my first Metroid game was Fusion. And when I finally got the screw attack, I was unstoppable, just unbeatable. And you get it by beating Ridley X in Fusion, right?
I think so, if I remember right. It's been a while since I played Fusion. But
yeah, it's a game I'll need to pick back up and dust off and throw it in the old Game Boy.
The screw attack is arguably one of the Samus's most iconic movesets. In fact, the icon for the screw attack is the emblem of the Metroid series. That kind of S-looking thing that's used. That's actually the screw attack emblem, and it's used as the logo for the series in a way. So again, it's just extremely iconic. It's been in nearly every game. It was missing in Metroid Prime, but then in Prime 2 and 3 it was incorporated. It was reworked in the Prime games, but I think like with the space jump, it was kind of done in the only way that they could do it. So whereas the space jump is just a double jump in the Prime games, the screw attack implements the more traditional functionality of the space jump, which is to continuously jump. But like you said, it's limited to 5 jumps, and it's not, and you can only just go in a straight path. And the screw attack and space jump actually work the same way in Other M as well. At least whenever you're in the 3D space. Some of the side-scrolling segments you can use it more traditionally, but yeah, it just allows you just jump continuously 5 times in a row, and you get it pretty late in both. You get it pretty late in Prime 2, but you get it very early in Prime 3, maybe like kind of halfway, because I think
it's like halfway.
Yeah, because you get it when you get to Elysia, but you have to backtrack back to Brio to get it. But
yeah, you have to teleport from Brio Fire to Brio Ice. And Brio Ice, once you get there, it's just like this little hidden area that you didn't know existed, and you find it, and it's solely for the purpose of getting the screw attack, an energy tank, a ship missile expansion, and 2 missile expansions. That's what's there. There you guys go. You're welcome. And they're hard to find though, so happy hunting. But yeah, the screw attack is really cool, and I wish that you could use it more traditionally in the 3D games, but I understand why not, because it would be very, very OP. People would just be jumping around, obliterating everything, kind of taking away from the difficulty of the games. And I don't think you can use it on phase at all in Prime 3. I don't think when you're in hyper mode, you can't do the screw attack. I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I think you might be right about that. But no, either way, it's just a fantastic and iconic item. It's an ability that's completely overpowered. Again, like the power bomb, it kind of turns your whole world around once you're able to use it. And it's no surprise that it's at the top of both of our lists.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get in most games, and in Metroid Prime 2, you don't get it until the very end of the Sanctuary Fortress, and the puzzle to get it is quite extensive.
I remember,
it's very fun, very unique, and once you have it, you're like, okay, I'm a god now. I can jump off of walls, and like the last pathway to get to the Emperor Ing, you have to. I mean, of course, you use it for various puzzles to jump off of walls and such, but the very last pathway to get to the Emperor Ing, once you get to the Sky Temple, is you use the screw attack to jump off of the walls to finally get to the room where he sits.
Yeah, the wall jumps were cool using the screw attack. That allowed you to use it in a more traditional way as compared to the 2D.
Yeah, depending on how high the walls went, you could go forever. You could use it more traditionally, and it was really cool to see, okay, hey, there are areas where I can kind of use this the way Samus is supposed to use it, you know. And once you jump off of the walls, then you get those 5 additional jumps. You can jump 5 times into a wall, jump all the way up those walls, and then jump 5 more times off of the wall. It was really cool.
Do you remember how we talked about the ghetto screw attack? Yeah, before you got the screw attack, you could do a ghetto screw attack by holding. That's what the gamer community calls it. That's the non-official / official term. It's holding down the charge beam while space jumping or while spin jumping, and you can do kind of a ghetto screw attack. There's something else I forgot to mention earlier, and I just brought it to my attention. When we were talking about the power bomb earlier, we completely didn't talk about how it's the well, it's the only way to beat the Metroid Queen in Other M, but it's kind of a secret in Metroid 2, Return of Samus, is that you can instantly beat the Queen Metroid by planting a power bomb in her stomach.
Really?
And that's one of 2 ways to do it, yeah.
Okay. So speaking as somebody who has never played Metroid 2, please don't hate me, because I never had an original Game Boy, and when I finally got into the gaming scene, when I was a kid, I kind of judged games based on how they look, not how they played or what their story really had. I was very, very one-sided when it came to video games, and I never got the chance to touch Metroid 2 just because I, one, didn't have the equipment and wasn't really interested because of how it looked, and that's why I didn't play the NES version of Metroid until I was in my teenage years. But when you're fighting the Metroid Queen, I knew that at the end of Return of Samus and the remake Samus Returns, you fight the Metroid Queen, which I know at Samus Returns, the Metroid Queen isn't the final fight. It's Ridley, but I don't know what he's called. It's a different Ridley, but that's one of the best Ridley fights in the entire series, but different conversation. I'm definitely going to have to go back and replay Metroid 2 Return of Samus just because it's a part of the series. It's an iconic game, and despite how it looks, a lot of people say that it is a phenomenal game, just only limited to its one console and, the black and white graphic and slight green graphical design of it. So, but if you can defeat the Metroid Queen, if that's a secret, that's really cool. I'm going to have to go through the game and just kind of do that.
I'm wrong. I just found out. No, there actually is no power bomb in Metroid 2. You just plant a bunch of bombs. But that was that it is in Samus Returns. You can use the power bomb. I don't know if it instantly kills her. No, wait, no, maybe it's not in Samus Returns. Never mind. Okay, so I'm mixing this up. The power bomb is used in Other M to defeat the Queen Metroid, which is an homage to the secret method, which is by planting bombs in her stomach in Metroid. So I was kind of conflating those 2 things, but either way, that's our top 5. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut in. It's really cool because in Metroid Other M, despite a lot of people's opinion about that game, you can't use the power bombs the entire game, which that's kind of a Debbie Downer. But
that's the first time you use it.
Yeah, Samus literally has no choice. It's either do this or I'm dead. I'm going to die because this ship is going to detach, or this part of the ship is going to detach and it's going to blow up. I've got to defeat her now or I'm dead. So she grapple beams into her throat, rolls in there, and you're just taking so much damage. And the first time I did that, I died because I had no idea what to do. You're not supposed to use power bombs the entire game, and so when Samus grapples, when you aim at her throat and grapple down, you're left with, okay, I have to do this. What am I supposed to do? And then I accidentally defeated the Metroid Queen in Other M the first time I did, because I was trying to figure out what to do, and I was spamming buttons. And while I was spamming buttons, I was holding down the one button, and it charged up the power bomb, and I let go, and it destroyed her. And I was like, oh, I won. It's over. I did it. And I thought that was the end of the game, but then the post game happens, and you can just drop power bombs anywhere, and it makes you mad because you realize the power bombs don't do the damage to the ship that Adam said they would, and you can't really be mad at Adam because he sacrificed his life for what seems like almost nothing.
Yeah.
But he did it out of the goodness of his heart to try and protect Samus, because who knows? If he hadn't have done that, a lot of people say that he gave his life for nothing, but if he hadn't have done that, Samus would have died, and if she had gone in there and tried to do it and done it herself, which would have basically ended the series, which wouldn't make sense because of the games that happened later on. And what if the Metroids in Sector Zero, what if something happened, there was a malfunction, and they got out? That's a conversation for another time, but I just want to debunk what everybody says about Adam giving his life for nothing, because while the story is not the best, it does add a sentimental part to the story and kind of puts you in your feels and gives you a deeper connection with Adam because of everything that he and Samus had been through. But I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand it back over to Ash.
We'll definitely talk about Other M sometime, and I'll have a lot to say about the two, because I think I'm a big defender of that game as well. But we're hitting at an hour here, so I guess we're going to go ahead and jump into the second part of the podcast, which is where we're going to talk about our predictions for Metroid Prime 4. We're going to take a short break right before we do that, though. So we'll be back in just a minute here. And we're back. So we're going to be talking about our predictions for Metroid Prime 4, what we'd like to see in the game, and go from there.
Yeah. Oh boy, this is something that has been long awaited and is still being waited for. So I'm kind of just itching to see the least bit of information that we can get about this game.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we've got basically next to nothing, so the sky's the limit. As far as I can tell, we know for sure it's going to be on the Nintendo Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I would think, they may switch to more traditional first-person shooter controls, using both analog sticks. However, what I'd like to see is the option to pick either that or use the gyroscope and the Joy-Cons if you choose to, use the Joy-Cons separately, and maybe have a control system more similar to what they did in Prime 3. And we know that they can make it work because of the way that Skyward Sword worked, which actually used the Wii Remote's internal gyroscope and not the sensor.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. As far as the new consoles are concerned, the more options that we have, the better, because really when it boils down to it, all it depends on is player's choice, and it's good to have options that tie into whatever the player wants to do, whether it's motion controls, gyroscopic controls, or dual analog. I personally would like the dual analog because I'm a huge FPS fan and story-based game fan, which a lot of those games use dual analog. So if that's an option, I'll definitely be using that. But yeah, having those choices would be great. And honestly, that should be a thing with how advanced games are. And it's been 14 and will be probably 15 years since the last Prime game when we get this one. So they need to have more options because overall, I think this is just going to be a much more advanced and beautiful game. And like you said, the sky's the limit with what they can do.
Yeah, and I really hope that in terms of content, what they'll do is I forgot what I was going to say now. Nope, it's gone. It's gone.
Well, it will definitely come back at some point. We've got a boatload of... Oh, there we go.
Beam selection. Let's bring back beam selection. That was missing in Prime 3. The beam stack-up system is fine, but being able to switch our beams, bringing back charge combos, super missiles, as well as power bombs is definitely, I think, the best route to go. I think what they can do also is bring together... bring in the new features that Prime 3 brought in that were good. But at the same time, don't bring back what was missing in Prime 3 that was in the first 2 games. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Beam selection is great. And of course, it was a small tribute to the 2D games in Prime 3 with the beam stacking. And it was cool to see how each of the beams kind of resembled the beams from Metroid Prime 1 and 2, how the plasma beam looked like the ice beam and the dark beam. The Nova beam looked like the plasma beam and not the plasma beam, the light beam and the wave beam. Excuse me on that. But yeah, if they bring back beam selection, that would be great. And they honestly should, because with this much time in between this game, the last game and this upcoming game, I'm really excited to see what kind of ideas they have as far as weaponry in the game, whether they'll stick with a more traditional route with the, power beam, wave beam, plasma beam, ice beam, all that stuff, or they just give us a whole new selection of weapons. Like either would be cool for me, but either way, I want to choose which weapon I'm using currently.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that also bringing in, I think, some of the isolated feeling that was in the first 2 Prime games and most of the Metroid games.
Yes.
Let's bring back some of the dialogue and some of the cinematic moments in Prime 3, because it's definitely the most cinematic out of the games. But let's leave that, relegated to certain aspects of the game, because it kind of took over Prime 3 and there was not really a feeling of isolation at all. So let's have that maybe in the beginning, maybe at certain points. But for most of the game, Samus is stranded on a planet by herself. And I wouldn't mind having multiple planets to go through as long as you can maintain that feeling of being isolated.
Yeah, the feeling of isolation, they did it best in Prime 1. And that was honestly what drew me to the Metroid series. And of course, the first game I played was Fusion, but you have Adam alongside you to check in when you have navigation booths.
Yeah.
But when you're by yourself, Samus has those little monologues when she's traveling up or down elevators. But pretty much for the most part, you're by yourself unless you're in a navigation booth. And I love that feeling like you're on your own. You have to figure everything out for yourself. Of course, you have an objective, someplace where you're headed, but feeling absolutely alone is one of my favorite things about the game.
Yeah, and it ties back to, I think, how Samus felt in... It ties back to the fact that Metroid, I think, is based on the Alien by Ridley Scott, and in particular, I think the first Alien movie, which is a very isolated film, and so maintaining that aspect of Samus being completely alone and withdrawn and just on this planet, left to the mercy of the monsters around her, and the planet itself, I think, is an essential aspect of Metroid. I also think that there is just a way that Prime 1 feels that's more like the other Metroid games that Prime 2 and 3 don't quite replicate. Of course, they're good for different reasons. I think I said in our Prime Trilogy episode that I think Metroid Prime 2 ended up being my favorite personally, but if they were to bring in the aspect of Prime 1, which definitely feels a lot more like the other Metroid games, I think it would make for a perfect game. So there's something about the way that Prime 1 plays. And I think it might have to do with the amount of backtracking that you have to do, that you go through multiple areas multiple times. That, for instance, you go, like we said before, to Phendrana, and then you go back to Talon Overworld, and then back to Phendrana. And it's kind of this back and forth thing, whereas Prime 2 and Prime 3 had more of you go to this general area for the most part. There's a little bit of backtracking to other areas to get certain item and then come back to your main area. But and that's a lot more of a traditional. I think that feels a lot more, for instance, like Zelda. But for Metroid, I like this feeling of constantly going back and forth between areas. And yeah, there'll be time when you're going to open up a new area and focus on that for a little while, but having to get an item and then go back to another area, get another item, and then, you know what I mean? I like a lot of that back and forth.
Oh yeah, 100%. And there's something about reaching an area that you can't quite access yet. And you're like, I wonder what I'm supposed to get, where I'm supposed to go so that I can unlock this new area. And once you finally find that new item or you activate that cinematic sequence and you're like, oh, wow, I can go here now. This area is accessible to me. And it's like a whole new part of, well, it is a whole new part of the game. It's not like one. And you just unlock new possibilities, new story, new areas, new enemies too. And that's just great. And Prime 1 did the isolation feeling the best and kind of gave me that feeling the best just because there's no one to check in with. There's no one guiding you. It's just you. You're alone. And Prime 2 and 3, Prime 2 had sort of a good isolation feeling, but you're still checking in with the Luminoth. You're still going back to the main temple grounds to find out where you're going next. And I just like having to figure it out all on my own. And finding items really helps with that just because, okay, I have new skills. I can do this.
Yeah, Prime 1 kind of didn't give you a lot of direction unless you were stuck. And then after a while, the map would kind of tell you where to go, which Prime 2 and 3 also do to an extent, but then Prime 2 and 3 also have like a general guide telling you, okay, this is where you need to go next. And I think what I liked about Prime 1 is that you kind of had to figure it out on your own. And if you were stumped, then the game would eventually start hinting you and giving you a direction, but you had some time to figure shit out for yourself and to really figure out, okay, I want to go here now because I unlocked this new ability. And so, you know what I mean? It was kind of a sense of, I just got this item, now where the fuck do I go? Well, I kind of remember there being a door here, or maybe you're just completely stumped and you're like, well, let's go check all the places, which allows you to go in and find power-ups and other items. So you have a lot of motivation to go off the path, the main path, and collect other things. Whereas in the other games, I mean, I feel like you're a little less inclined to do so. It kind of feels like you're going out of your way. Whereas in Prime 1, you don't know where the fuck you're going anyway. So you might be going to get just a collectible. You might be on your main path. You're really not sure when you're getting there.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. With Prime 1, the first time I got, I guess, scan data is, I guess, what you would call it, or data received, or whatever the computer voice tells you. There's a voice that tells you in the trilogy, but it just happens in the original Prime game. You just get the notification, press 1 to figure out where you're going.
Right.
Your system kind of tells you what's going on. Like when you're going to fight the Hive mecha to get the missiles, it tells you seismic activity detected, and it gives you the location of where to go. But I didn't get a notification. I was kind of moving through the game, kind of remembering where everything was. I didn't get my first data until it was time for me to go hunt for the gravity suit. Passing through the Chozo Ruins the first time, the door where the morph ball, the door in which the morph ball is hiding behind, you see that there's a red sort of barrier on it. And I tried shooting it with the power beam. Okay, I can't get in there. So the only other accessible door is where I went. And eventually I found myself at the Hive mecha, got the missile, went through, got the first energy tank, and saw a small hole that I couldn't go through. I was like, okay, this is a morph ball hole, but I don't have that yet. So let me go back to that door. I can unlock it now. And I sort of just followed that path throughout the remainder of Prime until I got to where I had to go get the gravity suit. And I love that just because it's like doors in a puzzle that you're solving to open, and one leads to another. You can go to another place because of something you did back here. And I loved games like that. And Prime 2 and 3 didn't really have that feel for me. It was just Prime 2 and 3 felt more like a linear experience, if that makes more sense. Like, yeah. Of course, Prime 1 is linear, but it doesn't feel that way because you're backtracking quite a bit, as you said.
Yeah, it's kind of the illusion of an open world. And maybe what Prime 4 could do is introduce more of an open world aspect to the game. And in the sense of maybe there's a multiple paths that you can take, and then you can get items in different orders. But ultimately, you'll need to do this to get there and this to get there. But you kind of have more of a decision on which way you want to go. That would be cool. I like the idea of multiple planets, but let's make them feel like actual planets. Prime 3 had multiple planets, but the amount that you accessed was basically not much more than you would have accessed when they were just different areas on one planet. You know what I mean? They were planets, but it was basically a name only. They were just different areas that, in the same way that you had Aegon Waste and Torvis Bog and Sanctuary Fortress. You know, in Prime 2, you had Brio and Elysia and the Pirate Homeworld in Prime 3. And that's the same way that in Prime 1, you had Findrana Drifts and Magmore Caverns and Chozo Ruins. You know, so it's kind of like those planets were just other sections. What if we had planets that were each as big as Ether was in Prime 2 and Talon 4 was in Prime 1? That would be amazing.
Oh my goodness. That would make for not only one of the best Metroid experiences, but one of the longest ones too. I'm down for an open world feel as far as a Metroid Prime 4 game is concerned, but games like Breath of the Wild, you can go anywhere and do anything that you want just as long as you're up for the challenge and you sort of have the equipment for it, you know? You can do any divine beast in any order that you want. What I don't want is a Metroid Prime game where I can just accidentally get the screw attack at the beginning of the game, because I would hate that, because you would just demolish everything in your path and it would kind of eliminate the challenge if the screw attack is a part of Prime 4, which it should be.
It should be. How about this then? And here's what I'm thinking. There's a specific path to go through and you won't get certain items until later in the game. But let's say you have 3 different planets to access, each, you know, like I said, that's as big as the worlds in each of the games. And so you can start from any planet, but there's a set path through each planet.
That would be interesting, and it would be really cool. They would just have to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
It would have to be done absolutely perfectly right. Since I can't English, that's the best you're going to get. I'm sorry. But that would be fantastic. You know, I would love for them to keep a linear mindset as far as the items are concerned, but as far as exploration is concerned, I mean, Samus is Samus. She's a badass. She can do pretty much anything that she wants. Why not be able to explore an area, maybe take a little damage to try to look a little further to see where you can go? Like, if they have something related to Phazon, which I don't think they will. I'm pretty sure Phazon was eliminated at the end of Metroid Prime 3, but if there's like a radioactive substance that hurts you and there's an item that you get later in the game that prevents that, maybe you can go a little bit into that area to see like what you're about to be up against. Mm-hmm. You know, it's really cool to think about the possibilities of what they could do with that.
Yeah, and as far as the story is concerned, I wonder, because all the Prime games are connected. They're all called Metroid Prime because essentially Metroid Prime is the overarching antagonist.
Yeah.
Metroid Prime was the first boss in Metroid Prime 1, and then in Metroid Prime 2 and 3, Metroid Prime becomes Dark Samus, who is ultimately the main antagonist of Prime 3, and then all Phazon is destroyed. So
yeah.
It almost seems like there's not very much to go from there. Phazon's destroyed, Metroid Prime is utterly destroyed, but I'm wondering if they can find some way to still tie it to the events, and basically that Metroid Prime is still kind of the catalyst of it, so that it still maintains the idea that the series, not only is the series connected still, but the name makes sense.
Well, since Nintendo only really revealed a title, not really necessarily a title, but just another 3D Metroid that's in the works, maybe the game won't be called Metroid Prime 4, but that's just their...
I think they did reveal that it was Prime 4, though. Metroid Prime 4.
If they did, then that's cool, but I know for a fact that it's going to be a 3D experience. I don't know how they're going to tie in the events. You and I were talking about it earlier. Well, actually, I don't know if you and I were talking about this, but what if there is a description of like how Samus is being affected by the Phazon corruption, like the aftermath of her being separated from it? You know, what if there's a storyline based off of that? That would be really interesting to see, like her having withdrawals, you know, and her having to deal with that, or her having memories or flashbacks of her encounters with Dark Samus, and they affect her in battle. Now, I don't want them to go the other M route where she sees Ridley and she cowers in fear, because that's not Samus Aran. But what if she has a little bit of PTSD from her past experiences, and like she has a flashback or a memory which, you know, affects her negatively right before she goes into a battle with an enemy that may or may not be familiar with her?
Yeah, I like that idea. And that would be a way to tie in the events of the other games, so that now, you know, Samus is, like you said, going through withdrawals, and she is... Sorry, I was just trying to text something real quick.
No, you're all good. This is America.
America. Yeah, and it's a way to tie in the events where even though Phase 1 is destroyed and Dark Samus is dead, that is still having an effect and still ties the plot together. I think that's a great way to go about it. Or maybe somehow another Metroid Prime is created by the end, or I don't know. You know what I mean? There's tons of possibilities.
Yeah, like what if the space pirates somehow manage to get some of Prime's DNA and they figure out a way to clone him? Or, they might even introduce Silex into the game from Metroid Prime Hunters, because he was kind of Samus's enemy in that game. And, seeing him would be really cool, how they would expand upon his story. And who knows, with how the Switch is, maybe they might have multiple playable characters, such as Silex. That would be really awesome for them to try to see or to try to create. Gosh, man, my English is off today. But we just need more information. They need to give us something, because I know this game is in the works. Retro Studios recently put out a job for like a head producer for Metroid Prime 4. And so I think they're really, really making it happen. They're making moves. And so that's really cool, really interesting to think about, because I need this game. I need it in my life. I've needed it since I finished Corruption back in 2011.
Yeah, I agree. And I definitely do as well. And, at the time, I think a lot of people were thinking, yeah, the Metroid Prime has run its course. It's time for Metroid to return. But now it's been long enough that we need another Metroid Prime game. It's its own sub-series with its own feel. And I think it means a lot to a lot of people. And like, we discussed before in that previous episode, Metroid Prime in a lot of ways, it's between Metroid Prime and Super Metroid. In a lot of ways is kind of the Nintendo 64 of the Metroid series. I mean, the Ocarina of Time of the Metroid series, because there wasn't a Nintendo 64 entry, and it probably would have been that. But Super Metroid is still looked upon for a lot of its aspects, and Metroid Prime, the original, is looked upon as taking the series, into 3D, and for introducing a lot of aspects. So,
yeah, Metroid Prime is. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say Metroid Prime is looked at as one of the best games of all time. It's just alongside of Ocarina of Time, and it's just they need to continue expanding upon that, because that revolutionized. While Ocarina of Time revolutionized a lot of games as we know today with like Z targeting and the way you can do things in that game, Metroid Prime really kind of opened up the series and gave it a whole new perspective that unloaded a whole new idea for combat. Travel. One thing I would really like to see, this just popped into my head, and we talked about items earlier, and I mentioned the Shine Spark, but what if they found a way to implement a first-person speed booster in Shine Spark? Like, you see Samus through the visor moving, and then the visor starts shaking, and you hear her breathing heavily as she's just booking it through wherever she's at, and then you can kind of look with your visor to see where you want to go, and that's where you'll Shine Spark.
I think it could be done with just a little bit of creativity, or hell, if we have to, push into third person, just like we did with the Morph Ball, while we're speed boosting or while we're Shine Sparking. I think there's definitely lots of possibilities. I don't even think it's necessarily impossible to bring the space jump back into it. Again, what if we were just taken out of the first person for just a second while we're space jumping around? I don't know.
It would be amazing to see them try to do space jumping in first person perspective. You just see the camera spinning over and over and over again, and you just get dizzy.
Well, what's interesting is that if you look at Metroid Prime 2 Echoes in the multiplayer, when you do the space jump, whenever you're doing it, it just feels like a double jump. But whenever you watch someone else do it, Samus actually does spin on the second jump.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like
that was always weird to me.
That was weird. She's looking forward the entire time from your perspective, but she is actually spinning. How, we don't know, but maybe that's the same way that she somehow is able to see while she's in Morph Ball mode.
She's got cameras all over her suit.
If that
change my mind.
If that's the case, I don't see any reason why we couldn't just continue just jumping in first person, right?
The camera's just bouncing every second. Oh man, I'm as awesome and as funny as that would be, I think they would try to make it seem a little bit more realistic. But whatever they choose to do, I'm going to be happy with, because we need a new Metroid Prime game. It's been too long, and the story as well as the isolation feeling mixed with the items in a 3D perspective, it's incredible, and it's unlike any other game experience. And I'm I'm in desperate need of a new Metroid game. Like, I just played Super for the first time like a couple months ago, and that was a really cool experience, but it wasn't a new Metroid game, you know? I still have to finish Samus Returns. I haven't finished that game yet, and I've heard that that's a phenomenal 2D game. So, when it's just a remake of the second one, Return of Samus.
Right. Yeah, Samus Returns is actually really awesome. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. But I guess that's pretty much all we have for today. We'll sort of wrap it up from here because we're already going on an hour and a half here. But we have, of course, a lot more that we could say.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as we hear more news about Metroid Prime 4, we'll be talking about it. And we're definitely going to be doing an episode on it when it comes out. So just stay tuned for that. Very soon here, we're going to have our season finale on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. And then next month in October, we are starting season 3. We'll be talking about The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Ooh.
That's going to be our season premiere.
Yes, Lord.
We're also look forward to, and at least one more bonus round this season, where Zach and I are going to be discussing Assassin's Creed. We're going to, timing it with the release of our Assassin's Creed episode, we'll do a bonus round dedicated to that as well. So that should be out very soon. Look forward to that. We're going to try to get going on more Patreon content. I know Zach said he wants to do more of the Let's Plays with me. So
yes, I do.
Hell yeah. And I'll also get going on some of our other content that we're behind on. Like, I want to get more of the video podcasts out. If you listen to Collateral Gaming and you love movies, check out Collateral Cinema as well. I'm on there. Dakota's on there. We've also got our co-hosts, Bo and Robert, who've been on Collateral Gaming before. And we have a lot of fun. Basically, it's the same thing, except we talk about movies. We are also starting up a new season of Collateral Cinema. We'll be doing Neil Breen's Fateful Findings as our season premiere coming in October, a week before the Collateral Gaming episode comes out. And I believe that's gonna be, we'll be recording the first week of October, the first full week of October. So that will come out the second full week of October. So you can expect Collateral Gaming, I guess, the third full week of October then. Something like that. We'll see.
Lots of content coming.
Lots of content coming your way. Exactly. So
I get it exactly. Terrible.
But yeah, that's all we got to say about it. And that being said, I'm Ashley Chancellor,
and I'm Zachary Gio.
We are Collateral Gaming. We are out. Collateral Gaming is an L Company production. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.